Well, we'd like to welcome you back to the coverage of Election Night 88. What we're going to do right now is speedily go up to the Dave's Corner. We're going to call this Dave's Corner for the rest of the evening. That's Dave's, two Daves. The apostrophe is on the end of the S, correct, Dave's?
Yes, thank you, Don. We've been discussing this lottery. Both of us are surprised by the great plurality that the lottery has. I think I've read most of the periodicals and the newspapers, and it seems to me that there has not been strong opposition for it. There has been some opposition against it, chiefly from important political people and by the newspapers and so forth. But what's amazing about that total, it's built up so far, is the fact that not voting on the issue is against the lottery, is a no vote, and what did we say, 63 to 27%.
I've got a couple of ideas, neither of them solidly based in knowledge or fact.
That's not what we're here for.
Well, one is there have been some big winners, and maybe that caused a few voters to change their minds, saying, listen, I could be partake of that. Secondly, I figure, and this has been overlooked by most of the professionals, that the big vote in favor of the lottery was deer hunters, and they came down out of those tree stands, walked through the woods, came out in time to vote.
Kidding?
See? No, I mean it.
500,000 of them in Minnesota.
That's right. The other thing I was thinking of is how far we've come in beating back our puritanical instincts. When I got to this state, they were talking about whether they should be playing bingo in Bloomington, for crying out loud. Not only did we allow bingo, then we got pull tabs, then we got horse racing, actually sitting on the back of horses. Now we're talking about a lottery.
I know.
I'm wondering where we're going to go. Blackjack in Bloomington or gambling at Gull Lake, David?
Shooting craps in the Oval Room at Dayton's. That's the next step. But what's amazing about the main complaint about the lottery was that people who could least afford it would gamble away the home, gamble away the family. It would produce a lot of alcoholism and suicides. And I think that we have to face the fact that these people are adults and they all can go to hell their own way. We don't have to look after them.
I'm going to write that down, Dean.
Please
Just
do.
have something for me to remember.
Don, that enough?
Yeah, just in time. Thank you very much.
As only they can do it. That's terrific.
Remember a little bit ago when we were talking about people hallucinating and coming up with those figures in the 7th District House race? Somebody was hallucinating, friends, when they punched those in. It was not 95 to 5. Arlen Stanglin over Marv Hansen up there with 7% of the precincts reporting. The real figures, the accurate figures, I am assured at this point, is Arlen Stanglin 53%, Marv Hansen 47. That looks a lot more like it, folks. We are now talking about a 6 percentage point lead for Stanglin, and that means statistically at this point, that's much too close to call, and that could be the surprise if there are going to be any in the Minnesota U.S. House races. That's the one that will happen, although right now the incumbent, Arlen Stanglin, is hanging on.
And we'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the evening, as we will all the local and state returns.
Skip, we're in a day and age now, aren't we, where some 95 to 97% of incumbents are returned to the House of Representatives?
98% of incumbents in a presidential year are normally returned. In a non-presidential year, you may get down to 90%.
Yeah.
The laws favor them. The fact that they're in office and they get a lot of publicity out of that favor them. They get free mailing privileges. And folks, PACs give to incumbents because incumbents can deliver to them. You can make a promise to somebody. As an incumbent, you can do something about it. As a challenger, you can say, when I get in, I'll do something. But till you get in, you can't do anything. So you've got a record as an incumbent. PACs give you money as an incumbent, and it makes it a lot easier to get reelected than elected.
All right. We're going back to CBS right now, and Leslie's Corner. Leslie?
Presidents usually carry in some new members into the House when they win elections. Ronald Reagan brought in 34 in 1980, but what's happening tonight is what's been happening all along, a lot of ticket splitting. According to our CBS News estimate, a quarter of the voters who went for Bush Quayle also voted for Democrats in the House. And what's really interesting are the groups that did that ticket splitting. Mostly conservatives, those who approve of Ronald Reagan, and Southerners, the very people that the Republicans were hoping to pull over for their down-the-ballot candidates to say that they had achieved some realignment. What's going to happen now, because of this return in the House, is that, as you said, Dan, Bush is going to have to contend with Jim Wright, and who has his own agenda he'd like to be pushing. The last time a president didn't carry his own party in was in 1960 with John Kennedy, and to make up for that, he had to bring Democrats into the cabinet, and they're already saying George Bush may have to do the same. The one incumbent we know who has lost tonight is in Georgia, Pat Swindle. According to our estimate there, the Democrat, Ben Jones, as one. Let's take a look at Ben Jones. This is the man who is the new congressman in the Georgia district north of Atlanta. He is the actor who played Cooter on the Dukes of Hazzard. He admitted in this campaign that he has more skeletons in his closet than the Smithsonian, but the Republican he beat, Pat Swindle, was indicted in the middle of the campaign in a money laundering scheme. So, Dan, Bush wins, but the Democrats stay in control of the House with a wide margin, maybe 79, 80 seats.
And as things now stand, they'll add to their margin in the Senate, but respectfully, maybe mild disagreement here. It's going to be hard to take anything away from George Bush when he winds up with an electoral college win of at least 309 plus. All those big states in the West where the polls are still open, we're coming up to the time in about 25 minutes. We'll know something out there could make a difference, but already we know this is an overwhelming victory for George Bush. Now, Bob Schiff, there's still a whole lot of shaking going on in those Senate races.
And especially out west, Dan, Doc Melcher out in Montana, the incumbent out there, the only veterinarian in the Senate. Turns out he has a very tough race tonight with Conrad Burns, who is a radio announcer, kind of the voice of Montana agriculture out there. That race at this point, we say, is too close to call. In Nevada, Chick Heck, the incumbent Republican there, facing a very tough fight, and that was expected from the governor out there, the Democratic Governor Richard Bryan. We don't know anything yet about the Senate race out in Washington. We are still watching in Florida and Wisconsin where we have close races. We can take a look to sum up. Remember, we began the evening with the Democrats holding a majority of 4 seats in the Senate. And at this point, they have a net gain of 2 seats.
Well, I know, Bob, you were planning to go to that recap board there. We just couldn't get it up in time. But a net gain for the Democrats of at least 2 seats as it now stands. And remember, they started the day, as you said, Bob, with a 54 to 46 majority. But a long way to go. A lot of very tight Senate races, still undecided in Florida, Nevada, Montana, just to name a few. Wisconsin, our CBS News estimate is that in Wisconsin, businessman Herbert Kohl, he's the Milwaukee Bucks professional basketball team owner. We estimate that when all is said and done, that Kohl, the Democrat, will have held on to the Democratic Senate seat in Wisconsin by beating the effort of Susan Engelleiter, who was the state senator and was trying to take the seat for the Republicans. We'll have more about that later on and be talking to Charlie Carrault after these messages. Dan Rather in New York.
Still big doings around here when the new models come in. Folks will be coming into my showroom. Make sure we've got what they're after. We listened long and hard. Put together just the cars they said they wanted. Word will get around pretty fast. Always does when it's good news.
GM dealers achieved higher customer satisfaction than any other U.S. automaker, according to a 1988 study by an independent research firm.
The mood is cotton, the moment your own. Abandon yourself to the feel. So comfortable, easy and calm. Embrace the feeling. Take comfort in cotton. Find the True Performance label on the Fox collection of comfortable all-cotton sweaters at JCPenney.
You can't see 5 feet in front of you.
Oh, you've been all over this.
I could tell them you memorized the eye chart.
I love you.
Jim!
Look! Our Liberty Bond! And maybe he'll come back sooner!
For that, I'll do anything.
Charlie Merrill helped Americans protect their country and savings. Today, Merrill Lynch can help find a safe haven for your money. Merrill Lynch, a tradition of trust.
When you head out on your own, make sure you take along the right equipment, like this St. John's Bay chamois cloth shirt from JCPenney. Rugged, roomy, 100% cotton comfort. In 9 great colors, $21.99. St. John's Bay, for those who like to set their own pace. See how you can win a 1989 Jeep Wrangler Sahara during Wilderness Days.
You're looking smarter than ever at JCPenney.
We'll be talking to Diane Sawyer and Charles Kuralt here very quickly, reviewing for you that George Bush is winning and winning rather handily in every section of the country, East, Midwest, Rocky Mountain West. Don't know much about the far West as yet. They're still voting in California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and Hawaii. But we feel confident in saying that George Bush will have at least 309 electoral college votes with only 270 needed to win. Diane Sawyer, George Bush's victory has also brought with it something that we heard a lot about 4 years ago, and we heard something about midsummer, the so-called gender gap. What happened to it?
Well, I'll tell you, Dan, in this trampoline of a campaign, the women have to be the Olympic medal winners. They have been up and down more than anybody else in this campaign. At one point, George Bush was losing among women by 20 percentage points. Let's see how it ended up. Take a look at what happened. In the end, he managed to close it. He lost among women by only 1 percentage point, but you can see he was winning among men by 14 percentage points, which of course points up the corollary problem the Democrats have, namely they haven't won the white male vote in this country since 1964. Nevertheless, that gender gap is persistent for the Republicans the other way around, and it's really Ronald Reagan's gender gap that George Bush inherited.
And that's a good point, Diane. So far, George Bush has done much better with women than Ronald Reagan did.
Well, it's been up and down and up and down. It turns out that he is doing not as well as Ronald Reagan did in '84, but he's doing about the same as Ronald Reagan did in 1980. And I'll tell you, we looked through all the statistics to see why this was true. And at first glance, it's hard to find. Women cite the same issues as men: middle class, values, economy, crime. Then when we got a little closer, we saw something else. And remember, we talked about that psychological sunny disposition factor. Take a look at men versus women on the economy. You can see here that men are much more hopeful about the economy than women. The proportions are exactly reversed. So I guess we could debate all night why women are more pessimistic than men, but we'll leave that to the living rooms at home to conclude.
Thanks, Diane. Charles Kuralt, glad to see you back up here with us. What was your sense when you talked to people, rode around, took your time, chatted with them, about what they expect of George Bush as a president?
I think they don't expect a younger, ideological Ronald Reagan. I think they expect a pragmatic president in President-elect Bush. And they're probably right. He's going to have to be pragmatic if he's going to deal with the problems that face this country in the next 4 years and what looks now like a solidly Democratic Congress. He can put this campaign behind him, I think. He can put that conservative Republican platform behind him. The one thing he can't put behind him is his choice for vice president. We have elected a vice president tonight, after all, as well as a president. We can talk about Dan Quayle a little later.
Charles, forgive me for interrupting, but this is live from Boston. Michael Dukakis, smiling, arriving outside his headquarters in Boston, where he has promised to speak sometime over the next 15 to 17 minutes. That, at least, is the last word we had. Note there that those who thought Michael Dukakis might be gloomy were wrong, because while he certainly didn't look to be celebrating, no reason to, that he was smiling and looking relaxed. But you were making a point that while people expected George Bush to be moderate, at least as a person in the presidency, that they had some other points as you talked to them.
Well, it's clear from everybody we talked to that Dan Quayle comes into office with about as little public confidence as anybody we can think of. It doesn't matter. Ben Franklin said of our first vice president, John Adams, that the title for him should be Your Superfluous Excellency. Most vice presidents have served and been forgotten by history, and really it doesn't matter unless something happens to George Bush. And I think that's probably still on people's minds. Dan Quayle has a lot of proving himself.
But the expectations are low, and that could work for him. That while every poll indicates that the Quayle choice by Bush was not a particularly one that was approved, every poll, although the votes show that it was, that he's 41 years old, got a lot of growth left in him, a lot of learning left in him, and people, I'm inclined to think, will take a new look and say, well, he's the vice president, let's see how he does. Charles, thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you a little later on. And when we come back, we'll review for you how large is large in this large George Bush-Dan Quayle victory, and bring you up to date on those red-hot Senate races.
Welcome back, everyone, to Election Night 88, coverage of the 1988 election here and across the United States by CCO TV.
Where those vote totals are trickling in now at this hour, let's go to the presidential race here in Minnesota. We have some updated returns for you, if we can take a look at them. With 659 of the precincts in, Dukakis leading Bush, 60% of the vote. He is expected to win the state by all estimates. He will win Minnesota, and our vote totals now indicate that very strongly.
The expectation, Colleen, was, of course, that in the U.S. House races that all of the incumbents in Minnesota would be returned to office. We'll have to see if that holds true. The only one expected to be close, of course, the 7th. In House District number 1, the southeastern part of the state, Tim Penny living on land that really belongs to the Republicans. That should be a Republican stronghold. It has not been, because Tim Penny is the most conservative Democrat in the Minnesota House delegation. Tim Penny on his way to re-election right now if these figures hold up. Number 2, over in the southwestern part of the state, Ben Weber got a wee of a scare a couple of years ago. Darn near lost that one. Decided to go home, tend to business, talk about local issues, and he is winning right now over his Democratic opponent, Doug Peterson. Weber expected to win down there. District number 3, the southern Twin City suburbs, Bill Frenzel, who's been around since Moses lost his shoes, first elected in 1970. Bill Frenzel going into his, well, this would be his 10th term in the United States House. Looks like he's going to win re-election there again if these figures hold up. In St. Paul, DFLer Bruce Vento hasn't had a serious challenge for some time. The figures right now would indicate that this one is not serious either, although Ian and Maitland certainly challenged him intellectually this time around. In the 5th District, basically Minneapolis, Martin Sabo doing very well against Buzz Gilbertson, winning there by a wide margin, about 3-1 at this point. Up in the 6th District, Jerry Sikorsky, despite his problems earlier this year with his treatment of his staff and all of the harangues that brought about, went home, did his mea culpas, and is doing very well against his Republican opponent, Ray Pletz, at this point. Now in the 7th, this is Arlen Stanglin against Marv Hansen. This is the one that was expected to be close if anyone was going to change hands. Stanglin right now leading by just 4 percentage points, getting a little tighter there. 86, I believe, precincts in. Can barely read that. I think it's 86. You can probably see it at home better than I can. Up in District number 8, James Oberstar was around as John Blatnick's administrative assistant in Washington for about 14 years and has been in the U.S. House for a long time, and it looks like he'll stay right where he is. He's safe and hanging on to his house in suburban Virginia. I don't think he's going anywhere.
And Skip, statewide voters were asked to vote on 3 amendments. We'll go to those results right now. Amendment number 1, the Environmental Trust Fund, setting up an Environmental Trust Fund. That appears to be sitting very well with the voters. 85% of the voters so far saying yes to that amendment. Going on to amendment number 2, placing fewer than 12 people on a jury. Certain cases, 58% of the voters say yes on that question. And going on to amendment 3, the question of setting up a state lottery. That appears to be winning as well, with 62 of the more than 4,000 precincts in. 61% of the voters say yes to Amendment 3, setting up a state lottery.
All right, now we're going to check at the DFL headquarters with Mike Strand, who is standing by. Mike, well, we are still wondering where Skip Humphrey is at this moment.
I can tell you this, Don, right now, Skip Humphrey has avoided the limelight all evening, having, you can see he's got we're in his suite here with most of the staff members from the Humphrey campaign who are still excited and are not ready to concede defeat. And at this point, the candidate has avoided the media all evening. He is not ready to concede. He's now in the hotel, but he's visiting friends and relatives who are spotted throughout the hotel area. And aides tell us that he still feels he can win. He is still looking at this, reviewing some more numbers. He is trying to decide, get a better feel for what the real numbers are, and despite the network projections, he wants to make sure he has the numbers solid before he makes any type of public appearance tonight. So as you say, we are still waiting for him, and he is expected to make an appearance sometime later this evening. Back to you, Don.
All right, thank you very much. Mike Strand, DFL headquarters, awaiting Skip Humphrey, and of course, Dave Durenberger will not make his victory speech until he hears the concession speech by Mr. Humphrey.
And speaking of the U.S. Senate race here in Minnesota, let's go and update those figures now. With 918 of the precincts in, Durenberger with a 53% lead over Humphrey with 43% of the vote. man is coming in with 4% of the vote in that race. Skip?
We will find out a lot more about why those votes are going the way they're going from Alan Cox with our North Star poll, and we'll do that in just a moment.
Pizza places.
Tell me about it, babe. Whoa.
Oh, they make me real mad. I like a lot of toppings, and when I don't get them, I've been known to use profanity.
Now, for a limited time, get a medium original combo for just $9.99.
I'll bet Gorbachev doesn't have toppings on his pizza.
I rock all across the country, and wherever I go, I see people getting healthy. Yeah, there's something they know. They know that milk's got the vitamins and protein too. So get some milk in your health kick, whatever you do. Come on and kick, health kick with milk. Come on and kick, health kick with milk. America's favorite health kick, milk.
Get on a health kick with milk.
Welcome back to Election Night 88, where we are beginning to see quite a few of the vote totals coming in this evening, getting a good picture of how both the state and local races are going here in Minnesota.
Now, figures are not only important, but the why and wherefore of how people cast their vote is also important, and that's why we've installed Alan Cox at the College of St. Thomas at our North Star poll location. Al?
Don, we seem to have indications that in the Senate race that Skip Humphrey didn't have a lot of success in his advertising efforts. On 4 key issues that we had picked out to ask Minnesota's voters about tonight in the Senate race, Humphrey had quite a few problems. On the issue of which Senate candidate would do the best job on crime and drugs, there was a clear vote in favor of Durnberger. Remember the clip we saw earlier in that final debate between the 2 Senate candidates, which Humphrey accused Durnberger of being AWOL on drugs? Well, he kept Durnberger's percentage down from what we think Durnberger's final vote total will be, but it still wasn't enough to carry through for Humphrey. On the question of who would do better for farmers after this difficult year of droughts, no difference between farmers and the population at large in Minnesota. Strong support for Durnberger. On the question of who'd do best with the economy, Skip Humphrey kept trying to hit at the fact that many people in society may not be doing as well in the current economy as others, but by nearly a 2-to-1 margin, Minnesota's voters believe Durnberger would do the best job looking out for the economy of Minnesota and the country. And on the question of who would do best looking out for health care services for the poor and elderly, you remember both candidates had a lot of advertisements on this subject, narrowly ahead for Humphrey, but this is within the margin of sampling error for a poll. One more statistic. On the question, we asked people during this poll, what was the effect of Hubert Humphrey's ads on your opinion of the race? 9% of the voters said that the ads gave them a favorable impression. 27%, more than a quarter of the voters, said that Skip Humphrey's own ads gave them an unfavorable impression of Humphrey, and about 2/3 of the voters said no difference. So you see the problem there, a very bad night for the DFL Senate candidate. In our poll, as it stands now, northeast Minnesota, the Iron Range, is the only part of the state that he is clearly carrying. We'll have the final results of our poll. We're planning to reach 1,000 people. We got 1,600 because we were having such fun over here. We may be able to tell you more about the results in the lottery. You may recall up till now we've been showing that as pretty much too close to call, and we should have those in a few minutes, Don.
All right, thank you very much, Alan. One of the interesting results in the North Star poll there is that Hubert Humphrey apparently had the ability to make health care an issue against David Durnberger, although not a single-issue senator himself. Certainly that's an issue that is his long suit, health care.
One of his very long suits, and it shocked the Durnberger camp. They never believed that would stick, but it obviously, by those results, has. Pat Kessler will give us some information about those all-important state legislative races in just a moment.
They've got watches.
Watches. At Best Buy.
Wristwatches.
School watches.
Cool watches. Something fashionable.
Something businesslike.
One for every day of the week.
I got a Seiko.
Timex.
Casio.
Loris.
Pulsar.
It was a gift.
The prices are low. Low.
Very low.
Well, it is Best Buy.
Get one of these Seiko watches for just $49.99. Plus great prices on Loris, Casio, Timex, Pulsar, and more. Now at Best Buy.
The federal deficit isn't about numbers. It's about people. Eliminating the deficit will mean thousands of new jobs for Minnesota's people. It'll mean lower interest rates for our farmers and small businessmen and women. It'll make it easier for Minnesotans to buy a home. The only way to bring down the deficit is to hold the line on federal spending. I've worked hard to do that, and we've made some progress, but not enough. I need your support to finish the job.
What you doing, Grandpa?
Oh, I'm just whittling.
Don't you have to work?
Not anymore.
Why?
Because my money works for me now.
Money works?
Well, if you put it in the right place where it's safe, it'll grow.
Can my money work?
Uh-huh. Oops.
Cut yourself again.
No.
Is it done?
Yep.
Ooh, I like this part best.
With us, Midwest Metro.
Grandpa?
Good evening. Welcome back again to Election Night 88. As we promised, some of those local returns are now just beginning to trickle in. It seems to take an awful long time for those to get here. We concentrate so much on the national races.
It's always amazing that the things that are closest to us take the longest to be done as well. The two cities, both voters in the two cities, both Minneapolis and St. Paul, have some charter amendments to worry about, and they did vote on them today. In St. Paul, the question of human rights, of whether or not an issue of human rights could be recalled, as the gay rights platform was several years ago, by a popular referendum. Right now, that charter amendment, which would make that illegal, is going down to defeat, but we only have about 57 precincts in. There's still 139 total there, so that one's still too close to call, I would guess, at this point. In Minneapolis, the strong mayor form of government in the staggering terms of 13 members of the city council is on the ballot as well, and that one's not going too far right now either, but we're only talking about 13 precincts in, so I don't think you can draw any real conclusion on that at this point either. All right, I'm sorry. Reducing the size of the city council, I'm going blind here from 12 to 9 people in Minneapolis. Maybe that's why I'm going blind. City councils never reduce themselves voluntarily, and it doesn't look like the voters of Minneapolis think that's a great idea at this point, but again, we only have 13 precincts reporting.
Okay. Those so-called Schulstad
amendment
proposals,
right.
and we yet to see what kind of return is going to come in on the Fraser.
The Fraser one, which I thought was coming in, we don't have that one yet.
All right, now we've got Pat Kessler standing by here to tell us how some of the target races are going in the state house race.
More returns coming in from around the state, from northern Minnesota, western Minnesota, and some of the Twin Cities area as well. We're looking at a number of races that Republicans believe they must win in order to gain more seats in the Minnesota House, and we're looking at races Democrats believe they need to win as well. Merlin Vollen, a Republican who lost his seat 2 years ago, is winning it back, it appears, from Marvin Downer of Hawley. Downer is the incumbent, a two-year incumbent. Vollen is on the way. In District 21B, Roger Cooper is ahead of Carlton Gustafson by a 54 to 46% margin, only 5 of 60 precincts reporting there. Both Democrats and Republicans believe they need to win that. In District 27B, Andy Steensma has a very good lead over Tom Surrey, the Republican. Steensma was elected 2 years ago in southwestern Minnesota, rather. In District 28A, we've got Ted Winter also leading. Bruce Lease, 62 to 38%. Ted Winter is a farmer. Bruce Lease is a radio personality in that part of the state. In District 36B, Bob Jensen is on his way to winning his seat once again. Bob Jensen, the incumbent, 69% to 31% over Bob Macklin. And we also have Chuck Weaver is apparently winning a seat in State House District 49A, but only 1 of 17 precincts reporting there. There's an awful long way to go in that one. Also, in District 63A, I believe, if we have that, in District 63A, Karen Bondi, we learned, is at 51% to 49%, a closely hard-fought race in the district formerly held by the late Representative John Rose, a Republican. Karen Bondi was John Rose's campaign manager for many years. Bondi leading Mary Jo McGuire, the Democrat, 51 to 49%, very close race there. We're going to be watching these races throughout the evening and keeping a tally as the night goes on to let you know who is winning control of the Minnesota House.
One of the things that the DFL party had come up with was a suggestion there were 7 vulnerable IR seats that they were going to target. Has any pattern begun to emerge in those vulnerable seats?
Still far too early to say. The vulnerable seats actually are probably a little bit more than that, according to Democrats, and Republicans believe that Democrats are vulnerable in some as well. And it's beginning to appear anyway that a pattern is emerging in maybe 1 or 2, but there is no way to tell yet, and it's probably going to be hours before we know who is even gaining toward that kind of control.
All right, Pat Kessler, thank you very much. It's time now to return you to network coverage of Election Night 88, and Dan Rather is standing by.
3, including California, remain undecided. And the one that Dukakis wins out west, you saw it just turn blue, is Oregon. 7 electoral votes. Michael Dukakis had an outstanding organization in Oregon, a state that generally votes Republican in presidential elections, but is considered on the borderline, and Dukakis' organization pulls it through. This is the first time since 1964 that any Democrat has carried a state in the far west. Now the national vote in and tabulated 48% of the precincts and as you can see, Bush was continuing to lead Dukakis about 54% to 48%. Now, 54 to 46. Now, questions. Does Bush get more than 400 electoral college votes? We can't possibly know until we see how California goes. And while the polls are closed in California, we want to be careful. We want to give it to you as quickly as we can. We want to be accurate. We're not prepared to say how it is going to go. So, does Bush get more than 400 electoral college votes? We can't yet tell that. And does Bush get a national overall vote percentage better than 53%, or is it in the 53% category? All of that is yet to be decided. Now, Bruce Morton, on the West Coast, the early indications are that Dukakis is doing a little bit better, and one reason is that Bush isn't doing as well with the women on the West Coast as he did in other parts of the country.
Our old friend, the gender gap, has resurfaced there, Dan. In Oregon, men split about evenly. Dukakis won women 60 to 38. I don't know why the gender gap is hopscotching about the country this way, but it is.
Well, we'll see from some of our polling why that is. Now, don't leave us now. Some of our affiliates will leave us for their own local return, so we'll pause for 1 second. For the rest of the nation, our coverage of Campaign 88 election night continues. Now, the reason I said don't leave us, so many things are yet to be decided. Keep in mind that there's been an awful lot of talk, hasn't there, Bruce, about the Democrats have to turn south. But with Dukakis carrying Oregon, by our CBS News estimate, breaking through in the west, you're going to hear a lot of people out west argue, listen, the Democrats just as well write off the South. They need to start talking about putting together the far west and the Northeast in terms of presidential politics.
Well, that was always what a lot of people thought Dukakis' best strategy was. It didn't work tonight, not because he's lost the Northwest. We're just beginning to find out about that. It didn't work because he lost so many states in the old Rust Belt that used to be the Democrats' home turf. Lost Michigan, lost Ohio, and all that. Oregon, as you've just said, he won, and California looks like being very close. In California, again, the gender gap is a factor. Dukakis doing much better with women than he does with men. Another unusual thing about California, Dukakis is running more strongly with younger voters. That's contrary to the pattern in most of the country. George Bush running more strongly with older voters. Again, not what he's been doing throughout. And in our CBS News exit poll, we asked people why they voted for their candidates, and got some answers that maybe are surprising. People voted for Dukakis because he was a liberal. In California, that plays, maybe not anywhere else, but there. They voted for him because he chose Lloyd Bentsen as his running mate and because of the environment, which everybody knows is a big issue in the West, especially in California. Why were they for George Bush? Well, again, it was experience. That's true pretty much throughout the country. Crime, a big issue everywhere, and the T word, no new taxes. That looks like a state where the suspense may go on for a while, I think.
Well, Bruce, emphasizing that George Bush, by any measurement, has won an outstanding victory here. Some interesting nooks and crannies are developing. That Bush did extremely well with white males in the South. Now, a picture is forming that possibly the Democrats are doing somewhat the same thing with women in the far West. We'll have to think about a while as to why that's true. Some of the early polling indicated that Dan Quayle was hurting Bush more in the West than he was in some other parts of the country. 3 Senate races just had the polls close in the far West, And in those 3 Senate races, we feel confident of saying that there is at least one winner in Hawaii. Our CBS News estimate is that when all the votes are in and counted from the beautiful island of Hawaii, that Senator Spark Matsunaga, seeking his 3rd term, will get it over the challenge of the 70-year-old cattle rancher Maria Huestes, one of 2 women running for the Senate. She doesn't make it in Hawaii. Now, Bob Schiefer, there's still a lot of red-hot Senate races. Anything from Montana, Florida?
Dan, we have our first word about the race, the Senate race out in California, where the incumbent Republican Pete Wilson faced a fairly stiff challenge from the Lieutenant Governor Leo McCarthy. We don't know how much of the vote is in yet, but we are now showing that that race is very close. Wilson had the lead there, but CBS News is now estimating that that race is very close, much too early to call it. Of course, in Montana, the incumbent Democrat, Doc Melcher, is involved in a very close race. We're unable to say how that race is going at this point. Also in Nevada, the Republican incumbent Chick Heck finds himself with a very tough race on his hands. So we might recap, and here's how it looks at this point in the evening. Remember, at the start of the evening, the Democrats held the majority with 54 seats in the evening, 1/3 of the Senate up for election tonight. 18 of those seats were held by Democrats, 15 by Republicans. Of the contests we've seen decided so far tonight, 18 have been won by Democrats, 9 by Republicans. We still have 6 that are to be decided. So at this point, we can say with certainty the new Senate will have 54 Democrats and 40 Republicans. The Senate is going to remain in Democratic hands. Thus far, the most important statistic, the Democrats have picked up 2 Senate seats.
And we don't yet know who carries California. Our CBS News coverage of Campaign 88 election night continues.
Hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Trained technical support folks are watching every one of the long-distance switches in the country. There's no slack. There's no time when they say, well, I guess I won't get long-distance service today, or days when they say, well, I guess this long-distance data service is not going to work, or I guess I can't have the computer in L.A. talk to the computer in New York tonight because AT&T's having a bad day. Downtime is not acceptable. You can't have bad days. You just can't do that in this company.
Ask every American the meaning of success, and you won't hear the same answer twice. Whatever your idea of succeeding, Citicorp and Citibank can help. With Citibank MasterCard and Visa cards, Citicorp Savings, Diners Club, and Citicorp Mortgage. We also serve millions of customers in every major marketplace worldwide. Citicorp, because Americans want to succeed, not just survive.
At CBS News election headquarters in New York, it's just past 11 p.m. Eastern Time in the USA. Still a lot to be decided. Yes, it is true, and it's been true for quite a while, that one can say we're going to have George Bush as the next president of the United States and Dan Quayle of Indiana as the next vice president of the United States. But Michael Dukakis has broken through, the first time a Democratic presidential candidate has broken through in a far western state, by carrying Oregon tonight. We estimate that when all is said and done, that Dukakis will have carried Oregon. The question, and this is the storyline of this hour, who gets the biggest electoral prize of all in California? The polls are closed in California, but we don't know who's going to carry the state in the presidential race, and it looks like that Senate race is going to be very close out there. We also don't know whether George Bush goes over the 400 electoral college vote mark. We don't know whether his winning percentage will be 53, 54% or above. If it's much above that, it certainly would be considered something on the order of an earthslide. All of those questions still up for grabs. While we check into our very latest returns and try to get California, Pennsylvania has not been decided yet in the presidential race. While we're checking on those, let's bring in Mike Wallace, who's been checking on the press, the medium, advertising. Mike, this is a big victory for George Bush and for Dan Quayle. It's also a big victory for a lot of people, such as Lee Atwater and Roger Ailes, who put together the advertising.
Well, you know, Dan, that no candidate walks across the street these days without a media master, an image maker. And Roger Ailes is it for George Bush, and for 4 Senate candidates and 1 governor as well. His labors earn him this campaign season, he told us, about $35,000 a week.
It was Roger Ailes who devised those tough and nasty ads that trashed Michael Dukakis.
Michael Dukakis is unbelievable.
And it was the same Roger Ailes who painted these kinder, gentler, more presidential Bush commercials.
The president.
But Ailes told us he had a problem with George Bush at the beginning.
I'm told that you worry about the fact that George Bush doesn't have enough personal ego.
I do worry about that.
What does that mean?
George Bush is very concerned about other people. And so even if a camera is covering him, he doesn't necessarily feel like the star of the event.
Ailes was a television talk show producer back in 1967.
You know, politics more and more is becoming show business, I find.
He was right. And at their first meeting, 28-year-old Roger Ailes told the future president he'd better learn how to use television or he'd lose again. Nixon hired him. Another former client was Senator Dan Quayle in 1986, and Ailes pushed to get Quayle on the ticket this year. Ailes' hallmark is tough talk in TV ads.
No wonder he's running from his record, but he can't run.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
No, not true. Not true at all. We have always counterpunched. We've always been hit first. And once we did, we come back. And we come back hard.
Hardball. Ailes is proud of it, and his ads make it stick.
His revolving door prison policy gave weekend furloughs to first-degree murderers not eligible.
Beyond that, Ailes says, the Dukakis team was simply outplayed.
If we went on national defense for 3 days, they would go on national defense for 3 days. If we went on the economy, so they were always a day late and a dollar short. And why they were doing that, I don't know, but they didn't set the agenda.
And if the other side goofed, the Ailes team exploited it.
That whoever put Mike Dukakis in a tank, that's the first pacifist to be on a piece of military equipment since Jane Fonda sat on an anti-aircraft gun in Hanoi.
What has this got to do with becoming president?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. But Mike, you know what the problem is in America?
What?
The problem is the media is interested in 4 things: pictures, polls, mistakes, and attacks. And if I give you one of those 4 things, you'll put it on the air in a minute. And if I do anything else, I got to fight for airtime. And so, consequently, we on our side try to give the media what they want so we can get headlines and airtime.
How do you plead, Dan?
My job is not to plead. My job is to do the best job I can reporting the news.
Pictures, polls, mistakes, and attacks is what the man said. That's what you people put on the evening news.
It's his night. It's his night. We'll talk about it tomorrow or next week sometime. He did do, and for George Bush, there's no question, he did an outstanding job. What do you think, Mike? How is he going to answer those who said, yes, he did a great job, but he didn't prepare Bush for the presidency because he stayed on the low road too long. He could have eased up at the end and helped the Bush presidency a lot.
I think that's a good, sensible criticism. But he would tell you, look, my job was to get the man elected. Unless he's elected, nothing follows.
Exactly. He's not here. We don't pretend to speak for him, but I have a reason to believe that's exactly what he would say. Thanks, Mike. Ed Bradley, I guess one example of how well George Bush and his team did, and we can praise Roger Ailes, Lee Atwater, Jim Baker all we want, but it was George Bush who put this team together. But one example of how well they all did.
Local WCCO TV coverage of Election Night 88 interrupts for just a few moments. CBS News coverage. We have some national races, some local races, and local charter amendments to take a look at. Colleen?
Don, first of all, we'd like to update those results in the presidential race here in Minnesota with 918 of the precincts in. Dukakis with a commanding lead here in Minnesota, 59% over Bush's 41%. Now, moving along to the U.S. Senate race, same number of precincts in that category. Dave Durenberger with a 10% lead over the challenger Skip Humphrey. Dave Durenberger looking like he is going to retain his seat in the U.S. Senate. Polly Mann, the independent, running with 4% of the votes. She's getting 4% of the votes with 918 precincts in.
Let's zip through the 8 congressional races, too. We do have results in all, or not final results, but we do have figures for you and new ones in all of those. Down in the 1st District, again, for those of you who aren't sure, that's southeastern Minnesota, the Rochester area. Tim Penny, first elected to the U.S. House in 1982, well on his way to being reelected over Republican Kurt Schrempf. Number 2, that's the one in southwestern Minnesota. Vin Weber, independent Republican, 58% of the vote there to Doug Peterson's 42%. Weber looks like he'll be returned to office. In District number 3, I don't think there's much chance that anybody but Bill Frenzel would go back into there this year. Bill Frenzel, who's been around for years, looking like he will be reelected, as does Bruce Vento in St. Paul and Ramsey County. District number 5, Martin Sabo with a 3-to-1 lead over Buzz Gilbertson right now. Sabo, a DFLer. And in District number 6, that's the northern Twin Cities suburbs, some of the eastern suburbs, Jerry Sikorsky, 35%, to his opponent, rather, Ray Pletz is 35%. The Republican Sikorsky was 65. Up in 7, northwestern Minnesota, Arlen Stanglin hanging on to a 53-to-47 lead over DFLer Marv Hansen. That one's still fairly close, but as more and more precincts come in, Stanglin appears to be looking stronger and stronger if he can hold that margin. District number 8, this was a gimme. Jim Oberstar over Jerry Schuster. Oberstar, the DFLer.
Skip, there were a lot of issues on the ballot, including 3 state amendments. We'll go to the First Amendment, which was setting up an environmental trust fund. That one is winning overwhelmingly, with 394% of the precincts reporting in so far. 83% of the voters said yes to setting up an environmental trust fund. In Amendment number 2, asking whether than 12 people should serve on a jury, 59% of the voters in the precinct so far reporting in say yes to that amendment. And Amendment 3, probably the most controversial, setting up a state lottery, 58% of the voters so far say yes to that proposal. That is with 397 of the more than 4,000 precincts in. There were also some amendments in some local, on some local ballots going into St. Paul. The St. Paul Amendment dealing with human rights. Residents there were asked whether the city's charter should be amended to exclude all human rights issues from a vote. That amendment appears to, it is losing, as we see it right now in St. Paul, with 57 of the precincts in. 56% of the voters said no to that in St. Paul. Now in Minneapolis, there was an amendment that was called the Strong Mayor Amendment. It would change the organization. Some people called it the Strong Mayor Amendment. It would support supported by Mayor Frazier. That one appears to be losing with 42% of the precincts in. However, it is so close, it is still too close to call on that one.
We're going now to check with Alan Cox. He, again, is at the College of St. Thomas, where we have set up a headquarters for the North Star Poll. North Star Poll has been very important to us to try to understand the electorate and why the electorate has made the decisions it has. Alan?
Well, Don, it is a poll, so there is a margin of error, but we have our final run now. We've contacted more than 1,600 voters throughout the state of Minnesota today, and we can give you the final rundown as far as the poll is concerned on how the results will turn out and on what some of the issues were that faced the voters. We show Michael Dukakis with a 2 percentage point lead over George Bush, but once again, the margin of sampling error is plus or minus 3%. All the networks now have called the race for Dukakis, so that's substantially consistent. But the voters had different views on the candidates when it came to the issues. They narrowly said that George Bush would make the better leader as president. For all intents and purposes, the Minnesota voters saw the candidates as even on that issue. On the issue of who do best on the economy, a slight edge perhaps to Dukakis, but not enough to make a major difference. Looking at the vote geographically now, according to our poll, in the metropolitan area, Michael Dukakis with a 4 percentage point lead. He's doing especially well in Ramsey County, we believe, and some of the suburbs, but not in the western suburbs. In the non-metro part of Minnesota, much closer race. We show it here, perhaps a slight edge for Dukakis based on his 2-to-1 margin in northeastern Minnesota, the Iron Range, but George Bush almost makes up for that, perhaps even does better than make up for that in northwestern Minnesota and in southwestern and southeastern. One more important result now from our final poll results. The question, should there be a lottery? We're showing 56% yes, 38% no, and the rest of the people in our survey say they were not voting on that issue. That would be counted as no. So with our margin of sampling error, it looks as if the lottery is passed. But I warn you that we find in the public opinion sampling that they focus on the big races, the presidential race, the Senate race. Everyone remembers how they voted there. People's memories may start to slide, or they may not be too sure how they did when they got further down the ballot. So this looks like good news for supporters of the lottery, but I wouldn't rush right out to buy the lotto cards quite yet, because we're going to have to wait to see exactly how many people voted in Minnesota and know how many people voted no by not voting at all. Don?
Alan, how many people is that usually? Some people say that's as high as 10% in amendments such as this.
Yeah, that's been the case. There were a series of amendments in the early 1980s in Minnesota in which more people voted yes than voted no, but a large enough percentage did not vote at all to cast the majority on the no side. So it's very important to find out the final canvas later this month to see exactly how constitutional amendments do.
All right, Alan. Thank you very much.
Obviously, there are a lot of results we haven't gotten to yet. We're going to take a quick break, and as we do, we ask you to keep an eye All right, we've had a change. Instead of going to break, we're going to return to CBS. Please stay tuned.
With the polls closed, but the results unknown. And as we've mentioned, Dukakis has done better than any Democratic presidential nominee in the 1980s. Now, one might want to note that that could be put by Republicans and some others under the heading of damning with faint praise in that department, but nonetheless, Dukakis will wind up with considerably more electoral college votes than certainly Walter Mondale, or for that matter, Jimmy Carter in 1980. In fact, only, I think, Lyndon Johnson in 64 and Jimmy Carter in 76 will get more electoral college votes than Dukakis has at this moment. I'd have to double-check on Humphrey in 68, but I don't think that, well, I'm just not certain. But suffice to say that Dukakis comes out of this with some consolation prizes. Their names include the state of New York, which he carried, the state of Illinois, which he carried, California, where he still has a chance to carry it. We may be around a long time before we find out how California went. But, Bruce Morton, what kind of patchwork quilt for Dukakis amidst the sea of red? It is, we've said it and we say it again, an outstanding and overwhelming victory for George Bush. But you look around the map, and in the Northeast and in the far west, there's a patch or two of blue Dukakis in there.
Well, this may be, Dan, it's a little early to say, I guess, the start of a new kind of Democratic coalition, which is based on the far west, the Rust Belt, in the Middle West, a couple of farm states in the Northeast. People have always said you don't need the South if you can score in the West. The Democrats seem to be doing that.
Michael Dukakis live is his headquarters in Boston with his wife Katie at his side. She's been in the hospital lately, but out now.
Thank you all very, very much. Kitty and I and our family can't even begin to express our gratitude to you and to hundreds of thousands of people like you across this country who have given so much to us and to the American people in the last 18 months. Just a few minutes ago, I called Vice President Bush and congratulated him on his victory. And I know I speak for all of you and for all the American people when I say that he will be our president, and we'll work with him. This nation faces major challenges ahead, and we must work together. And I extended my best wishes to him and to Mrs. Bush and to the members of the Bush family. Kitty and I also had a chance to talk to Lloyd and B.A. Benson. And I know we express your feelings when I say that he and she were superb running mates. They're wonderful friends. I'm so proud of that choice, so proud of both of them, and we have formed a friendship which will last as long as we live on this planet. They are two wonderful people, and Lloyd Benson has been one of the great assets of this campaign. Just 18 months ago, on what, as some of you will recall, was a cold and snowy April day, I asked you for your support in running what I called a marathon for the highest honor that the American people can bestow on anyone. I said there'd be good days, and we had a lot of good days, didn't we? I said there'd be not-so-good days, and we had a few of those, too. And I talked about another marathon that I had run in April of 1951, when I found myself struggling up a hill or two and people saying to me, "Looking good, Duke. Go to it." That is what you have done, and I'm very grateful to you. We had those good and not so good days. We reached Heartbreak Hill and overcame it. And then we found the strength to make that final kick. And tonight my heart is filled with gratitude to everyone who has made this extraordinary experience of ours possible. From my friends and neighbors here in Massachusetts to those 3,000 people who were waiting for us at 3 o'clock this morning in Des Moines, Iowa. As I think back on this marathon, I'll never forget the beauty of this magnificent land, from those beautiful colonial villages of New Hampshire to the farmland of Iowa to the magnificence of Yellowstone and the California coast. But most of all, I'll remember the people I've met, their strength, their values, their generosity, and their hospitality to Kitty and me and to our family. And it is very important that we continue to fight for them and for families all across America. We've got to fight for that young family in Levittown in Long Island, New York, that wants to buy a home in the community in which they grew up and can't afford it. We've got to fight for that family in Sioux City, Iowa, that can't afford health insurance to pay the bills for its young son. We've got to fight for those high school students in Los Angeles who are saying no to drugs and yes to their future. We've got to open up that door of college opportunity to every young person in this country who is qualified to do college work. We've got to fight to end the shame of homelessness in this country, and this great and good nation ought to be able to do that. We've got to fight for those unemployed steel workers in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, and Youngstown, Ohio, who ought to be able to have a good job at a good wage to support themselves and their families. And we've got to fight for those families I met with in Glen Avon, California, whose children today are permanently crippled because they happen to live next door to one of the worst toxic waste dumps in the United States of America. This campaign has not been just about me and Lloyd Benson. It's been about these families and the challenges they face every day of their lives. And it's been about all of us and the values and the ideals that we share. That's what we've been fighting for, and that is what we must continue to work for every day and every week and every month of our lives. I'm going to continue to work for these goals with you, with my fellow governors, with a Democratic Congress, and I'm proud to say that we not only will continue to have a Democratic Congress, but it looks as if a strengthened Democratic Senate. We'll be working with the new administration, and above all, I'll be working with the people of Massachusetts. Let me say thank you to many, many people in this country, those who gave us their support, those hundreds of thousands of volunteers who worked so hard and so long and so tirelessly. I want to thank the members of the world's oldest and greatest party, the Democratic Party, for all that they did. I want to thank this wonderful family of mine, Kitty and John and Andrea and Carr and Lisa, and my mother and Kitty's dad. They've been terrific. And let me simply conclude by saying this to all of you and to people like you all across the country, and especially to those of you who are young people. And there are many young people here. There is nothing you can do in this world more fulfilling and more satisfying than giving of yourself to others and making a contribution to your community and your state and your nation and your fellow citizens. One of the things that I'm proudest of in this campaign is the thousands and thousands of young people who are involved. I don't want you to be discouraged. I want you to be encouraged by what you've done in this campaign. I hope many of you will go into politics and public service. It is a noble profession, a noble profession. My dad used to say to me over and over again, much has been given to you and much is expected of you. Much has been given to the young people of this country. The opportunity to live and grow up in the greatest nation on the face of this earth. And you have a responsibility to give something back. Our hearts are full. We love you all. We love this country. We're going to continue to fight with you and with the American people so that every citizen of this country can be a full shareholder in the American dream. Thank you all very, very much.
Classy, generous, and Mrs. Dukakis, her face, a picture, a profile.
What you see on your screen there is what we call a shared picture. You see a live shot from CBS television news at Dukakis headquarters in Boston, and also our own WCCO television news cameras at the DFL headquarters in Minneapolis. We're going to swing out now to Cindy Hilger, who is standing by at the microphone to give us some reaction to the reaction. Cindy.
Don, I'm here with several first-time voters. I've got two women here that are students of the College of St. Thomas. It's the first time you voted. You voted for Michael Dukakis. What are you thinking right now?
Well, I believe I made the right choice. I'm proud of Mike Dukakis, and I'm very proud to be a Democrat, and I wish Bush luck.
Begrudgingly, though, right? How about you?
Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. I put a lot of homework on the back burner, but even though the sacrifice, I felt it was worth it, and if I could do it over again, I'd vote for Michael Dukakis.
All right, very good. And how about you? You're a newcomer to Minnesota. What do you think?
To Minnesota, yeah. I'm very disappointed that he didn't win. However, we'll look forward to the next 4 years, and we'll be there again.
All right, thank you very much. With that, Don, we're going to toss it back to you.
All right, Cindy, thank you very much. Cindy Hilger standing by at the DFL headquarters in Minneapolis with, well, a sad group of people, but what can one expect?
It has to be a somber group, even though Dukakis won the state. You can't really celebrate too much about that when he, after all, lost the national election, which it is all about.
And for DFLers here, the fact that Skimp Humphrey also lost the only other statewide race there was, the U.S. Senate seat. No, it can't be a very pleasant time for DFLers any place in the state. And I noticed one of those young women that Cindy talked to said she wished Bush luck. He's going to need it.
Yeah.
The U.S. House is going to be heavily controlled by Democrats. The U.S. Senate right now is swinging 54 to 40 in Democratic control. That's a net pickup for them with 6 undecided seats left out. Well, Ed Benson said it pretty well. He said there would be no honeymoon for the new president if it was George Bush. He will be chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, the folks that control the money on Capitol Hill, at least on the Senate side. And my guess is George Bush will have his work cut out for him.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to go now to Daryl Savage. He is standing by at the Marriott in Bloomington, the Independent Republican headquarters. And I hope you're going to be able to tell us that you've got the individuals that orchestrated the Minnesota campaign for George Bush.
You better believe it. I don't have to tell you, the atmosphere here is quite a bit different. And one man is very, very happy. Joining me now is Dave Jennings. He's the campaign chair for the George Bush campaign here in Minnesota. What's going through your mind right now?
Well, I'm having a hard time wiping the smile off my face. Obviously, I'm pleased that the vice president has won the national election. And frankly, I'm still holding out hope that he's going to carry Minnesota. I am not prepared to concede yet and won't be for quite a while. So I'm feeling pretty good.
You were telling me earlier in the past when there have been projections of a low voter turnout that was supposed to be good for the Republicans. A high voter turnout was supposed to be good for Democrats. There's been a high voter turnout today, and still the Republicans have done very well. What does that mean to you?
Well, the demographics in the country are changing. It used to be that young people who didn't vote very regularly were Democrats, and old people who did vote regularly were Republicans. That's changing. Older voters are increasingly voting for Democrats, and younger people are increasingly voting for Republicans. And so get out the vote, and high voter turnout is becoming our problem, so to speak. We had a high voter turnout today, and we feel good about it.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, Dave Jennings, the campaign chair for the Bush Committee here in Minnesota, and there are a lot of people here who are getting ready to celebrate not only Bush's victory, but apparently Senator Dave Dornberger's. He should be down here shortly. Don?
All right, thank you very much, Daryl. Not only is he the campaign chair, I think he is 1/3 of the entire paid staff of the Bush campaign in the state of Minnesota.
I think you're right, Don. In just a moment, we're going to go to Dave Moore and Dave Nimmer, who undoubtedly have a lot to add on what has already happened this evening. But first, we're going to go to a break. And as we do, please keep an eye on your television screen. We're going to have some results from the suburban races. We'll be right back.
It's a fact. Nobody in the world sells more trucks than your local Ford dealer. Number one. The reason why? Quality and value. You get both from your local Ford dealer. And right now he's offering special savings on the entire line of Ford trucks. Save over $2,000 in options plus cash back from Ford. There's only one place to get the world's best-selling trucks, your local Ford dealer. The quality people with the quality products.
The neighbor on the right bought the Toro CCR 2000 last year, which prompted his neighbor to the left to get one this year. He soon discovered that it was compact, easy to handle, yet had the power to clear 12 inches of heavy snow. He also discovered that while this Toro with the unique curved rotor would throw snow 30 feet to the left, it would also throw it to the right.
If it doesn't snow, it'll return your dough. See these dealers for all Toro snow risk details.
You make choices every day.
Maybe you have a morning radio station and an all-day station. I know I do. I might listen for news, talk, or wacky humor first thing. But that's okay, because then I can settle into FM 103's great light songs to sing along with. WLTE is perfect to spend the day with, wherever I am. So no matter what station you start the day with, remember to spend the day with the Light FM, FM 103, WLTE.
Welcome back to Election Night 88, where there is a lot still to come. The results are just really starting to come in, particularly around the state. But we've got a couple guys, I understand, who have a few words they'd like to say on a national race.
Have you ever known them to not have something to say?
Oh, shy, retiring types upstairs?
Dave Moore and Dave Nimmer in Dave's Corner.
Don, thank you, but I'm sure this is an idea that is shared by practically everyone out there. Michael Dukakis' supporters saw Dukakis a few moments ago in Boston in his concession speech that they did not really see once during the course of the campaign. We were envisioning his staff and aides sitting back there watching him saying, geez, why didn't he say that during the debates? Why didn't he tick off all those liberal traits? Why didn't he show this humanity? A wonderful speech, but it's too little too late.
Well, one of the things that bothered me in the campaign, and I think bothered other people, is that here was Michael Dukakis saying, I can manage the government. No, we wanted somebody who could be a leader. I mean, that was the real issue. Somebody would say, yeah, I'm a liberal. You darn right I'm a liberal. Brian Lambert in the Twin Cities Reader wrote it best. He said, here's a guy who's trying to come off as a 37th floor number cruncher, some micromanager. He said, no, we ought to have a guy who says he's a liberal, who writes that, who could put it into a 30-second soundbite and says, yeah, I'm a liberal. I'm the latest in the line of folks who proposed, advanced, and written into law virtually every social program, every Environmental Protection Act, every Civil Rights Bill, every health care and education bill worth having since the turn of the century, by God. That's what a liberal is, and that's what I am.
He didn't mention that at all. He didn't respond to Bush's, you liberal, you. He didn't say one thing. And I think it's going to be a source of wonder. History, political scientists will wonder until their death why this man and why his aides did not suggest that he speak up. Not that it would have won him the election, but it certainly would have made it more exciting for everyone, I think.
One question is, if America, the Democrats want to run a real liberal, will Jesse Jackson be around in 1992? I keep hearing the talk about all the young people, but there were a lot of young people who are poor, who are part of the underclass, who didn't vote this time. The yuppie young people voted, and they were all protecting their pocketbooks.
It's not who voted for George Bush, it's who did not vote. That gap between the rich and the poor is certainly, you have to think that the unions didn't vote for the vice president. The minorities didn't vote for the vice president. And most of the disenfranchised, I would think. Where did it come from? The yuppies got out and voted, and good, solid, strong core traditional Republicans voted for him. There was no waffling.
They want us to go now, Dean. I'm going to, as usual, take notes from you.
Other than that, Don, we have no opinion on the matter.
I don't know what time tonight are you guys really going to begin speaking your mind?
Yeah, about 1:45.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Time now to turn to Pat Kessler. He's here to talk about the state House races. As I understand it, Pat, as you have been explaining to me, that both Democrats have targeted seats that they think they can win away from the Republicans. Right. Republicans, the same thing. How is the strategy working?
Exactly. That's exactly what's happening. People think they need to win a certain amount of seats in order to gain control or keep control, and so far the results are just trickling in. We're not going to know for some time if the Republicans or the Democrats are successful. However, it appears the trend right now is toward the Democrats. Let's go through some of the numbers, if we could. In north central Minnesota, District 4B, Tony Kinkle, 58% over Roger Gunsberry, 42%. Only 6 of 89 precincts reporting very early there. In District 9B, Merlin Vollen appears to be leading quite a bit at this point. There are 17 of 78 precincts, not too many there, but Vollen has a trend anyway. Downer is the incumbent. In District 11B, we've got Jim McLeish and Claire Nelson. Nelson is the incumbent. He is leading there. In District 19A, Rob Eastland losing at this point to Harold Lasley, the incumbent. District 21B, we have Carlton Gustafson, who is losing to Roger Cooper, the incumbent. He's a Democrat, 54 to 46%. District 27A, Norm DeBleek is leading 55 to 45%. In District 27B, another tough race in southwestern Minnesota, Tom Surrey is losing to Andy Steensma in a big way with 20 of 67 precincts reporting. In District 36B, we can go to, well, let's go to 28A. That's Ted Winter and Bruce Lease. We've got Winter, a big lead right there, 62 to 38%. Now we'll go to 36B if we could. Bob Jensen is leading in a big way, 62 to 38% again. About one-third of precincts reporting, 7 of 21 there. In District 49A, we have a flip-flop there. Chuck Weaver was leading the last time we saw. Now it is Chuck Reich. Charlie Weaver, 49%. Chuck Reich, 51%. 2 of 17 precincts. That's a tough, tough race there. And in District 52B, Dick Pello and Jim Senden. Pello leading, Senden 52 to 48%. At this point, the trend, as I mentioned, was toward the Democrats. Of the seats the Democrats wanted to keep, they are leading in 7. Republicans are leading in 3, and 2 of the races we've been watching are too close to call. If we had to guess at this point, which we aren't going to do, of course, but if we had to, I would say the trend, of course, is to the Democrats. Republicans may pick up several seats, however.
All right, well, thank you for not guessing then.
You got it.
That comes later in the news.
You bet.
Okay, speaking of newscasts, we will have a WCCO television newscast, which will contain the rest of the day's news coming up sometime here during the night when the powers see fit to do that. Right now, though, we're going to send it to some commercial messages to help pay for this extravaganza, and we'll be back shortly.
Remember the iWorks? Now it's iLab. It's like another grand opening.
There's even a special offer. Come on. Right now, when you buy a pair of glasses, you get a second frame free. There are hundreds of frames to choose from. You can still get quality glasses in 1 hour, and you know they'll be right. Free frames. Now that's pretty exciting, isn't it? Come on in.
The iWorks is now iLab. Hurry in, sale ends soon.
Today's high-compression engines not only rev high, they can run hotter than regular small car engines. Their searing heat can begin to break down an oil immediately. That's why there's Castrol, the motor oil that in every grade provides maximum protection against viscosity and thermal breakdown. So use Castrol before your engine does something to get you heated up. Castrol, engineered for today's smaller cars.
Big Wheel Rossi featuring Castrol GTX, 89 cents a quart, all 30 locations.
Menards has big values like carpeting by Diamond Mills on sale now. Save on the Extra Plush High Society or the Riviera, both with attached Tangaback, now just $9.99 per square yard. Save 50% on wallpaper, too. That's right. All Berkeley and other pre-pasted wallpaper in stock, patterns for every room on sale now at half price. Hurry in, the sale ends this weekend at Menards.
We're helping you build America's heartland at Menards.
Welcome back to Election Night 88. I think we're going to take this opportunity to update some of our election returns. We're going to start first with the presidential race here in Minnesota. With 1,524 of the precincts in, Dukakis with 57% of the votes. That has been pretty much the way it's been going all evening long as those votes have been coming in. Bush with 43% of the vote. Going on to the U.S. Senate race, this as well going just as it has all evening. 54% of the voters casting their vote for the incumbent Senator Dave Durenberger, who appears to have a very commanding lead over Humphrey with 43%, and the independent challenger as well, Colleen Mann, with just 3% of the vote.
It appears at this point, Colleen, as though all 8 of the state's incumbent congressmen have won or will win another 2-year term in the United States House of Representatives. Down in southeastern Minnesota, Tim Penny there with a commanding lead over Kurt Schrimp, the independent Republican challenger. Over in southwestern Minnesota, Vin Weber about in the same situation. The independent Republican Weber there looks like he will be back for another 2-year term. District number 3, no question either. Bill Frenzel, who's been around for, well, he's been around since 1970 and is the oldest member of the delegation at age 60. Frenzel with a commanding lead there. District number 4, Bruce Vento doing very well. Vento, the DFLer, will be back for another 2-year term, as will Martin Sabo, the Minneapolis congressman in District number 5. Sabo still with about a 3-to-1 lead over Buzz Gilbertson. District number 6, Jerry Sikorsky, again with a commanding lead over the independent Republican challenger Ray Pletz. And to District number 7, the closest of all thus far, Arlen Stanglin, 54%, Marv Hansen, 46%. That shows that Stanglin is seeming to gain now on his DFL challenger. He'll probably be back if that continues. Jim Oberstar, there never really was a question there. Jerry Schuster simply wasn't much of a candidate to worry about, at least for him. We have some statewide constitutional amendments on the ballot as well. Let's check those out right now. Most people going to the polls, at least thus far, most of those counted, apparently are in favor of establishing an environmental trust fund in the state, possibly one of $1 billion to take care of the state's wetlands and natural resources. Let's find out what they're doing, too, on those who would prefer to have juries of fewer than 12 people on certain cases, civil cases, criminal misdemeanor cases, and gross misdemeanor cases. We're not talking about capital offenses here. And it does appear that most Minnesotans who have voted thus far and have been counted are in favor of that. But given the 10% problems, that one could still change a little bit, so I would think we ought to hold off on calling that. The other constitutional amendment, the one to involve the statewide lottery, again, that's doing pretty well right now, 58 to 42, but there's still a lot of votes out there that come in. I wouldn't wrap that one up quite yet either.
Okay, several amendments also on the ballot in St. Paul and in Minneapolis. Let's start with the St. Paul amendment. First of all, that is on the issue of human rights. Voters were asked whether the city's charter should be amended to exclude all human rights issues from a vote. The voters there say no. 56% of them say no, that the human rights issues should be put to a vote in St. Paul. Now, moving along to Minneapolis, there were quite a few amendments on that ballot. This one was the question of whether the organization of Minneapolis city government should be changed, giving more power to the executive committee and to the mayor. That one is a dead tie.
Right now we're going to go to CBS, where we're going to be hearing from George Bush.
Stormy night.
As George Bush prepares to make his victory announcement, one is reminded that the Bush family has had an exemplary sense of duty and service, both of them.
4 sons, 1 daughter.
And everybody, friend and foe alike, when they talk about George Bush, talks about 2 things first and foremost. One is his dedication to his family, and the other is how many friends he has kept over the years. That's not easy in politics. You may want to note that George Bush used contact lenses for a lot of the campaign, but tonight he has his glasses back on. And who can blame him? Time to celebrate. Who needs those uncomfortable contact lenses anyway?
Thank you all very much.
The first man in 150 years to succeed to the presidency directly from the vice presidency. Not since Martin Van Buren in 1836 has anyone done it. And the Republicans become the first party since the Democrats in the late 1940s to assure themselves of 3 terms in the White House.
Thank you all. Thank you. First, thank you all very much.
you. I have just received a telephone call from Governor Dukakis. And I want you to know he was most gracious. His call was personal. It was genuinely friendly. And it was in the great tradition of American politics. And we can now speak the most majestic words a democracy has to offer. The people have spoken, and with a full heart and with great hopes, I thank all the people throughout America who have given us this great victory. And I thank Ronald Reagan. I thank him for turning our country around and for being my friend and for going the extra mile on the hustings. Was just like him. He is simply one of the most decent men I have ever met. I want to thank my friend, my running mate Dan Quayle and his family. And they have shown great strength under fire, campaigned incessantly. And I am proud of him and proud of his family. I want to thank my great friend, Houston's son, Jim Baker, and our campaign Chairman Lee Atwater and the men and women of the campaign, the national staff, the RNC, all of our state chairmen and chairwomen and all the organizations and the political clubs, and I especially thank the young people who were always up at night putting up the signs. The people at those telephone banks and the one who canvassed door to door. And there's a large gathering of volunteers right now at the Washington Hilton. And my folks, my heart is with you. And many, many thanks for all you've done from our nation's capital. And I want to talk about my family. Fact is, I'd be nothing without them. Our 4 sons, our daughter Doro, and my own Barbara Bush. And I guess I shouldn't say she's my own anymore, for soon she'll be the First Lady of all the United States. And I thank God for the faith He's given me. And as I grow older, I'm more aware of the spiritual element in life, and I ask for God's help. And I thank the men and women of Texas. There are people right here. I recognize them. Started out with me in politics in 1962, and you never lost faith. You never left me, and you're a source of my strength. And this is a moving night for all of us, and you can't help but be moved when your country endorses your hopes and your candidacy,
And the feelings are so personal. But the decision is larger than that. And now we will move again for an America that is strong and resolute in the world, strong and big-hearted at home. And when I said I want a kinder, gentler nation, I meant it, and I mean it. A campaign is a disagreement, and disagreements divide. But an election is a decision, and decisions clear the way for harmony and peace. And I mean to be a president of all the people, and I want to work for the hopes and interests not only of my supporters, but of the governors and of those who didn't vote at all. To those who supported me, I will try to be worthy of your trust, and to those who did not, I will try to earn it, and my hand is out to you, and I want to be your president too. But I think I know how Governor Dukakis feels. Lost a few along the way myself, and it hurts. But we both went into the arena, and we fought long and hard. The governor can take great satisfaction in the fact that his valiant family, Kitty and Kara and Andrea and John, did him proud. And now I know that we'll come together, as we always have. 200 years of harmony in the oldest, greatest democracy in man's time on earth. And I've traveled many miles and reached for many hands, and it's occurred to me that what we were having, the people of America and I, was a conversation, a back and forth, a mutual dialogue, and it cannot go away. Not now, not when I need it most. And so I mean to keep the conversation going, to keep walking toward you, talking with you, and reaching for the hands. And another thing, I'll do my level best to reach out and work constructively with the United States Congress. And a final word about what you mean to me, my friends in this room. Every time Barbara and I come to Texas, it's a homecoming. We were young here. Started out here 40 years ago, summer of 48. Worked in the oil fields and, started a business and went into politics. 40 years. 40 years of work and caring and friendship. And now I'm going to take that love and friendship. It's all right here in this room. Put it in my pocket, take it with me to Washington, D.C., where it's sometimes cold, but always bracing. And where God knows there's lots of work to do. So thank you. God bless you. And one other thing. Once in days that were a little darker, I made a promise. And now I'll keep it. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thanks for everything, and God bless America. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
The next president of the United States, George Bush, and you see a live shot from his headquarters, and sharing the screen there, the Independent Republican headquarters at the Marriott in Bloomington. We're going now for some reaction. Mike Walsher is standing by to get a view on how the speech is received there.
Right, Don, this place has absolutely exploded in a frenzy of excitement, tears of joy, people hugging each other, the most excitement that we have seen all evening long, as about 600 independent Republicans here celebrate the victory of George Bush, his ascension to the White House. There are a lot of young Republicans who are backing Bush. That may be a surprise to some, but he's very strong amongst people 18 to 35 years of age. Joining me now are a couple of them, Tim Paling and Debbie Nelson. You're both 19, right?
Yeah.
Why do you like Bush?
Well, I like Bush. I think that he's really more in the mainstream of the American people. I think that the Democratic Party in general has lost sense with mainstream America, and George Bush defined Michael Dukakis as a liberal, and I think fairly, and I agree with that.
Debbie?
Oh, I just think he's really in with everything, and I don't know, I just like what he had to say, and he got his point across and everything.
Okay, very good. Two of the George Bush supporters who are celebrating his victory, his election as president this evening at the Marriott. Don?
Mike, is there no terrible or serious reaction? Well, we'll get you Mike later. Mike's talked enough here. Oh, excuse me. No, I've talked enough, colleague.
Okay, we are going to be back in just a moment with some of the rest of the day's news from our newsroom. Tony Saffold will bring that to us. But first of all, we're going to go to a break, and we'd like you to keep another eye on that. On the screen, we're going to run some more suburban results for you. So stay tuned, please.
The Johnsons had an open house tonight, but the guests weren't invited. Luckily, the Johnsons had the Gold Star homeowners policy from American Family Insurance. American Family will repair or replace their house. Great protection on their contents, too. Gold Star homeowners insurance, the best protection you have against uninvited guests.
American Family Insurance.
Look in the white or yellow pages for the American Family agent nearest you.
Introducing the import pickup you've been waiting for. The 1989 Dodge Power Ram 50 4x4.
Welcome back to Election Night 88, where all night long we have really been concentrating only on the election news of this November 8th. There's a lot of other things going on today.
Exactly right, and that's why we have Tony Saffold standing by in our main studios to bring us tonight's news. Tony?
Thank you, Don. Good evening, everyone. I am Tony Saffold. We will return to our election coverage in a few moments, but first a look at some other news. An important deadline is looming in the takeover battle between Pillsbury and Grand Metropolitan. In less than an hour at midnight, Grand Metropolitan's $60 a share cash offer to Pillsbury stockholders expires, and the British firm can start buying up majority shares of Pillsbury stock. But Grand Met may be in a holding pattern while awaiting the outcome of an appeal to stop the food giant from launching an anti-takeover defense called the poison pill.
Volume/price volumes.
At the close of today's market, the price of Pillsbury stock reflected little change despite active trading. The experts are now saying Grand Met might extend its deadline on the day-to-day basis pending the appeal, but the outcome seems predictable. Major stockholders tendering their shares, giving Grand Met majority ownership.
It's our feeling that there's going to be a large tender of institutionally owned stock, and there will be a large tender of arbitrageur-owned stock.
Meanwhile, Pillsbury, without giving details, says the poison pill is just the first step in an effort to fight back. But anxious shareholders and doubtful analysts say the poison pill is merely a bargaining chip being played for a better offer. In a game, Pillsbury is sure to lose.
At a certain point, when the price of the offer from Grand Met gets to a point that Pillsbury can no longer say that's an inadequate offer, then the poison pill doesn't do them any good anyway.
Some financial experts in New York say they are bracing for possible mass trading tomorrow. They predict as much as 51% of Pillsbury stock could be sold as soon as tomorrow. Minneapolis police are investigating a shooting tonight that has left one man hospitalized in serious condition. Police were called to 3521 4th Avenue South just before 8 o'clock and found the victim with a gunshot wound to the abdomen. Police are looking for a suspect who was seen leaving the scene in a white two-door Oldsmobile. A Minneapolis man who shot 2 would-be burglars last night says he was just trying to protect his family. Blaya Yang says he and his family were sleeping when 3 men broke into his home and started going through their belongings. Yang says one of the men had a large 2x4.
My heart just beat hard, you know, and I didn't know what to do.
Yang says when the men threatened his family, he pulled a .22 caliber rifle and shot 2 of them in the leg. All 3 men are expected to be charged tomorrow. 2 of the men are hospitalized, recovering from their wounds. St. Paul police have 2 suspects in custody tonight after they found the suspects driving around with $180,000 worth of marijuana. The arrest came this afternoon following a lengthy investigation. Police say they followed the suspects from their home after watching the 2 men put large packages into the trunk. The men were picked up on Interstate 36E in Maryland. When police opened the trunk, they found 115 pounds of pot. Charges have not yet been filed. Charges will be filed in an alleged pull-tab scam in St. Paul. 2 men and 2 women were arrested last night in Lamont's Bar. One of the men was staying at a motel in Roseville where police found counterfeit money in his room. They also found materials to doctor pull tabs to make them winners. Police say the 35-year-old Blaine man used the fake money to buy the pull tabs and then collected real cash after he changed them. Police say the man will be charged with aggravated forgery and could face federal counterfeiting charges as well. Minneapolis city workers are doing some house cleaning after neighbors complained about a home on Bloomington Avenue South. The yard was filled with paint cans, lumber scraps, and other garbage. The owners were told to clean up the mess earlier this month, but they didn't. Now city workers are hauling the junk away and will bill the homeowners for the job. It's no longer news that smokers face a greater risk of developing cancer, but now evidence suggests that people who are overweight and don't exercise or have a poor diet may also be at risk. That's the preliminary finding of a 6-year study of more than 1 million people nationwide conducted by the American Cancer Society. Health and Science reporter Tony Vigneri has the story.
The Cancer Prevention Study is designed to find out the relationship between lifestyle and environment and the development of cancer. In Hennepin County, 11,000 people were asked to fill out questionnaires about how they live, the illnesses they get, and what their diet is like.
We'll be able to tell people what they're doing in their lifestyle, what in their environment might be making them at a higher risk of cancer.
The Hennepin County results are being tabulated with the national results. So far, the study has found that out of 1.2 million people surveyed nationwide, starting in 1982, 50,000 have died. Officials are now computing how many were cancer deaths. 40% surveyed were overweight, and of that group, 87% died. The study also found that exposure to diesel fume exhaust slightly increased lung cancer deaths. And the study confirmed the link between smoking and lung cancer, poor nutrition and colon cancer, and obesity and breast cancer.
It's really getting back to the public and saying how important their diet is, how important exercise is.
The study will also answer questions about the connection between passive cigarette smoke and cancer and increased rates of cancer among blacks. Tony Vigneri, WCCO Television News, Minneapolis.
The American Cancer Society will spend the next year tabulating the information from this study. A last-minute drive to get voters to the polls brought Jesse Jackson to Minnesota this election day. He attended a rally at the U of M campus in Duluth. Jackson targeted the Duluth precinct for his Get Out the Vote drive because only 4 people there voted in the September primary. It was a different message delivered on the streets of downtown Minneapolis this afternoon. While millions of Americans exercised their right to vote, these people exercised their right of free speech, urging people not to vote. They are members of the anarchist bowling league who say government is just too restrictive. And right now we're going to cut our coverage and go to CBS for further election coverage.
Thank you very much. You have truly made this the most memorable night in our lives. And believe me, Marilyn, Tucker, Benjamin, and Corinne and I, we will never forget this night. We won't forget what you did for me and what you have done for George Bush. For nearly 3 months since our convention in August, we have witnessed firsthand the dedication and professionalism of literally thousands of supporters, volunteers, and staff members everywhere. Through 38 states and for more than 235 separate appearances. So tonight, a salute to all who we never had a chance to meet or to say hello. Marilyn and I thank you so much for all you have done. And let me say a special thanks to a great wife, a great mother, and a great campaigner, Marilyn Quayle. A special thanks to my Senate staff, my campaign staff, and to all those back at headquarters who committed all their energies and devotion to the cause of this campaign. And before I say anything else, I think we in Washington ought to let them hear us in Houston, Texas. To George and Barbara Bush and their family, we say congratulations. Mr. Vice President, or better yet, I like the sound of Mr. President-elect.
Well, he said, let's...
Headquarters. This is the first time Attorney General Humphrey has made an appearance here tonight. It's the first time the supporters have been able to see him and to appear before the media following the networks and the state projections that he is the loser to incumbent Senator David Durenberg. Approximately 300 supporters here tonight gathered around him. The Attorney General has been going throughout the hotel tonight to separate suites, talking to family and friends, and he has made little contact elsewhere. Here he is.
My dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, and to those who are listening out there, the people of Minnesota, this has been a special night for me, for my family, for my mother, and for all of you. And I look out to a sea of faces here of the finest friends I've ever had in my life, and I thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Well, I love you too. All right? We've fought a hard campaign. We've done it in a Minnesota style. We've not been afraid to confront the issues. to talk about a record, to raise the concerns about the future of our people and our children, because I know that just like me, you are deeply concerned about making sure that our state and our nation and this world is a better place in which to live. The way we do these things in Minnesota is to do it in the best of traditions. I just made a phone call shortly ago to Senator David Durenberger, and I told him, first of all, congratulations on his victory, and that I would be working with him to help Minnesota and to help this nation. And I know that we can do it together, ladies and gentlemen. We can do it together. This election is not a defeat. This is, for me personally, a victory. We have gained so much. And let me tell you why. I've learned what true friendship and loyalty is all about, and you have taught me that. And I've learned anew what caring for our people in this state is all about. And I'm going to practice that. And I have learned what solidarity of purpose and hard work can accomplish. And I have learned to love evermore the beauty of this land known as Minnesota. And it is a beautiful land with wonderful people in it. And I found new strength in myself and in my family. And I'm going to be sure to use those resources in the future. And I've tapped a deeper commitment to serve you, the people of Minnesota. I can tell you that. All of these sources are a newfound energy for me. And with that energy, I can only go in one direction, and that is forward. Avanti, forward. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let me tell you, tonight is not the end, it's only a new beginning. Okay? All right? It is a beginning for better health care. It is a beginning for better education for our students. It is a better beginning for our senior citizens, and I will help to make sure that we complete that mile. Okay? I'm ready to work with this great party and the great people of Minnesota to meet the challenge and turn them into opportunities. And I look forward to doing with you starting tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. All righty.
Attorney General Hubert Deeds.
Thank you.
To incumbent Senator David Durenberger tonight, following a night of really seclusion here in Minneapolis. He said he wanted to remain with family members, very close friends, and take a look at the numbers as they came in to get a close and accurate perspective as to how this campaign is winding down. Back to you in the studio, Don.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. That's Mike Strand, you don't see there, but who has been covering the Humphrey headquarters there, DFL headquarters, along with Cindy Hilger. I don't think that we have to say goodbye to Skip Humphrey, Hubert Horatio Humphrey III. I think he's going to be around for a while. I think he's going to be a candidate in a lot of other races. How think you?
Oh, I certainly think he's going to be around for a while. I'm wondering, though, if he is a candidate in another race, if he would choose to run the kind of campaign that he ran this time. Of course, we're talking about the very negative personal attacks that were taking part on both sides of the race between Senator Dave Durenberger and Skip Humphrey. That was really what seemed to get a lot of the attention of the voters this time around. Not so much the issues, but the attacks.
And what apparently didn't work for Humphrey this time and tended to work against him in the final analysis, although it appeared to work for a while. I'm not sure Skip Humphrey could tell you if he'd run a different campaign at this very moment, and I don't think any of us know, and that will depend, I suppose, again, on how voters react to what's going on. I've said that before, I guess, but as long as we continue to respond well to negative advertising and it works, they'll continue doing it.
I think we can get it from the candidate's mouth at this point, but we want to go back out to DFL headquarters, where Mike Strand is going to be speaking with Hubert H. Humphrey III. We got a kink in a microphone line of some kind there. We apologize for that. We have the ability to tape record an interview with him. We don't mean to slight the candidate, but we will be getting back to him later.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We do know that although Skip Humphrey did not do well around most of the state, one area of the state that he did seem to do fairly well in was on the Iron Range, although he did not have a substantial lead over Senator Durenberger there. He did seem to run pretty well according to at least the results we've seen so far and some of our results from our North Star poll.
What were those, Skip? Do you have?
Statistically really insignificant. A 1 percentage point, 48 to 47 lead for Humphrey, and that goes beyond the Iron Range. It went to the entire 8th district, which is a lot more than Minnesota Iron Range. But, I mean, he needed to do a 20% margin up there to even stand a chance, and obviously didn't. That also may say something about the DFL's strength up there.
All right, well, Tom Stewart is standing by in the 8th district. I think you're still at the Rustic Rock Supper Club, are you not, sir?
Don, I couldn't quite hear what you said just before coming to me. Of course, there are a lot of disappointed DFLers, however, here in the 8th Congressional District, particularly on the Iron Range. Yes, Skip Humphrey did carry the 8th District barely, the one spot that he did turn out the vote very well. However, it's not by anywhere near as far as people had hoped it would be, especially people like Harvey Weaver, a laid-off steel worker from Babbitt, from reserve mining. Really, that's what so many of the issues revolved around here, didn't they, Harvey? Economics. Do you think that had, what was it that Skip failed to do up here, perhaps, in his campaign?
I think Skip put out a real good campaign up here. I think he just didn't have the time to be in this area as much as he should have been. But let's go to Durenberger. Well, I feel that Durenberger, when he comes to Minnesota campaigns, I think he puts on in Minnesota that he's a good liberal, he's a Democrat, goes back to Washington, and votes with the Republicans. And I think that most of the voters in Minnesota doesn't follow Durenberger's voting record, and I think Humphrey tried to point it out, but the people didn't seem to catch on what he was talking about.
Did Humphrey never really seemed to catch fire up here in the gut with some of these workers? There were those stickers that I've heard about, you know, Durenberger stickers on steel workers' vehicles.
I never seen any in our particular area. I haven't seen any of the results, but I think in the northeast corner, I think Humphrey probably did fairly well. I think it was probably Duluth in the strong Republican seats, like the 8th House seat, which Mayor Boo is in. I think it was probably a big turnover for Durenberger in that district.
But he did run strongly here. You feel the Humphrey candidate did?
I would feel he did, because Jim Oberstar run good, and I would think they'd run pretty much the same on the Iron Range.
Also, a lot of disappointment here, too, I must tell you, Don, about Michael Dukakis, because he is the one presidential candidate who has come here to this area in particular. Workers like Harvey Weaver very much felt a personal connection to him and to the Dukakis message, which he talked about the Iron Range all over the country. A lot of disappointment about that as well, Don.
All right, Tom. Thank you very much.
That gentleman that Tom was just talking about, in a way, at least it seems to me, pointed out a difference between Jim Oberstar and Skip Humphrey on the Iron Range. He mentioned at one point that Skip Humphrey probably didn't have enough time to spend on the Iron Range, not as much time as he should have spent. But Jim Oberstar ran in the 8th district because, of course, it was the only place he was running. He didn't have to run statewide at all. And my guess is Skip Humphrey, to some extent, may have taken the Iron Range somewhat for granted. The Iron Range, the 8th district, tends to be a DFL stronghold. If DFLers are going to run well any place in Minnesota, they can count on running strongly up there. That works when it's a DFL year. What we may be saying now is that the Iron Range wants its statewide candidates, at least the DFL ones, to pay attention to them, to go up there as much as they go to the Twin Cities and the suburban areas and the areas where the population centers are that they have to win as well. Maybe that's the kind of, I mean, I can't prove that. Our North Star poll may be able to tell us something about that. Only time may also tell us something about that.
Well, certainly Michael Dukakis paid a lot of attention to the Iron Range, and that paid off for him up there. He did a lot better than Skip Humphrey did in his on the Iron Range, and he seemed to emphasize that quite a bit in his campaign. He paid a visit to the Iron Range and spoke a lot about the politics and his plans for economic recovery up there.
Now, last night's Humphrey rally up there may have been just too little too late.
Let me try to throw sort of a fly into all of this ointment just one time. The question that occurs to me is whether Vice President Walter Mondale might not have been able to pull out a victory against Mr. Durenberger in this race if he had been running for the Senate.
Boy, I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. Fritz Mondale was obviously very intent on staying out of the public limelight in this race. I don't think unexpectedly, feeling there may be some backlash towards him, I think.
But I set the question up only because of the suggestion that he may be running, that is, the Vice President may be running against Mr. Boschwitz.
That is still a possibility. You know, it's a good question, Don. I don't know the answer. I wish I thought I did.
Well, you know, several years ago, I think people would have thought Skip Humphrey would have done a lot better than he did tonight against Senator Dave Durenberger. So it's rather difficult to tell in a race that is perhaps far, maybe down the road someplace, or one that is never to take place. It's hard to guess. I think people thought Skip Humphrey several years ago would have done better tonight.
And I'll add one other thing. Now, this is a little early, but I would have expected that if Fritz Mondale was going to take on Rudy Boschwitz, that we would have had a lot better indication of that by now than we do. I think as days progress, there is less and less and less chance of that happening.
Okay. We've been saying all along that Mr. Durenberger would not make an acceptance speech, a winner speech, until he heard from Mr. Humphrey. We have heard from Mr. Humphrey, so we want to go out to the Independent Republican headquarters to see if Mr. Durenberger is prepared now to make a statement. Mike?
Well, Don, we're waiting in the hallway outside the ballroom at the Bloomington Marriott. Numerous Durenberger supporters here waiting to greet the senator who has won re-election to another 6 years in the United States Senate. He should be heading down the elevator, and we hope to talk with him in just a couple of moments. Senator Durenberger said he would not come down to make his official victory statement until he had first heard from the Humphrey campaign by telephone and then had actually seen Skip Humphrey make his concession speech, which he did just moments ago. We'll talk with a few of the Durenberger supporters here. Ma'am, your name?
Judy Ferber.
Are you surprised at the margin of victory by Senator Durenberger?
No, I expected it.
What about the tone of this campaign? It was negative.
That I didn't like. No. No, I think Mr. Humphrey addressed that when he said that he was going to look into that and change things in the future. Hope that's true of all the candidates.
So you hope the future campaigns are not quite as nasty?
Right.
Okay, very good. Darrell Savage is inside with other Republican supporters here at the Marriott. Darrell?
Mike, here inside the ballroom, people are starting to crush in again. The atmosphere is changing. There's a feeling of electricity. Have to consider that for the past hour and a half, things have slowed down drastically here. For the most part, people had just gathered around the monitors, and they were watching the speeches of the winners and losers in other areas, and they didn't have much to do themselves here but listen to a little bit of music. But the announcement about 5 minutes ago that Senator Durenberger was going to be coming back down got everyone come back into the ballroom, and they're pretty excited about what they will be hearing shortly. Now, one thing we should point out is that a lot of people have come and gone tonight. There still seems to be a good number of people here. They'd expected about 1,000, and I think that's what they've got here. Various people have been speaking ever since Dave Durenberger was last in here when he was talking about the vote. We're looking at a 55 to 42% lead over Humphrey, and that is something that's making Durenberger very happy at this point, because they've gotten to the point where he's going to come down. He told us earlier tonight, this is the senator, that he was not going to be saying anything until Skip Humphrey had conceded. And even if that took the rest of the night, he wasn't going to say anything until later in the evening. Now we're going to go back out to Mike Walter, who's standing outside the grand ballroom. Mike?
Right you are, Darrell. We're still waiting here in the hallway outside the ballroom. Senator Durenberger, first elected in 1978. He won the seat of the late Hubert Humphrey. He was re-elected then in 1982. He beat out Mark Dayton in that race and has now beaten Skip Humphrey to hold title to another 6 years in the United States Senate. He served at times as chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee during his 10 years in the U.S. Senate. He's been on the Finance Committee. He's known in the U.S. Senate as an expert on health care. He's known as Senator Health Care, in fact, although I thought it was noteworthy earlier that our North Star poll found that many Minnesotans felt that Skip Humphrey would do a better job in the area of health care than Senator Durenberger. We'll talk with some of the other Durenberger supporters as we wait for him to head down, or we'll head back now to Don Shelby, and Senator Durenberger should be down here soon, Don.
The way it will probably work, Mike, is that we'll go start something and then he'll come out of the elevator. That's how it's been working all night for us. Thanks, Mike. Even though he has won and we'll have this return trip to Washington for 6 years, apparently he's not going to go back to any strong power position because of all of the control of the Democrats in the Senate.
The Democrats contain control of the U.S. Senate.
And
in fact, they have added a seat.
They have added several seats at this point. The way it is going, the latest tally I had gave the Democrats 54, the Republicans only 40, with 6 undecided, a couple of those undecided likely to go to the Democrats. So at this point, my guess is they will come up with 2 more seats than they had last time around. That's still not a veto-proof Senate. I mean, there's no way they can guarantee themselves overriding a George Bush veto without Republican help. But it's certainly going to give them some strength.
I was only off by about 15 seconds. Let's go back to independent Republican headquarters.
One moment. Senator, are you worried about the tone of this campaign? Will it influence future campaigns in this state?
No, I think that what happened during the course of this campaign means that the rest of the campaigns in this, at least for the next 10 years or so, are going to be a different and more positive kind of campaign.
Did you have to engage in the attack ads against Humphrey? Could you have stayed above the fray and won?
We call them effectiveness ads.
All right, very good. When people are clamoring for you, we'll let you go inside, Senator. Dave Durenberger heading inside to the ballroom at the Marriott now to greet his several hundred supporters and to accept his victory, his re-election to another 6 years representing Minnesota and the United States Senator. Many of his family members are here. He's greeting one of his brothers there and other supporters as he enters the room. Senator Durenberger is joined tonight by his parents, George and Isabel, from Avon, Minnesota.
We want Dave! 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 We want Dave!
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce a very, very good friend of yours and mine, the past, the present, and the future United States Senator, David Durenberger.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's our campaign song. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. Well, we did it.
My friends, my family, I think it's practically all here. Danny called from the University of Richmond where he claimed he had an exam today. We all of us, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for what took place in Minnesota today. It will for us. It'll be a great honor. It'll be a great honor for us to stand up for you in Washington for the next 6 years. The name Dave Dernberger may have been on the ballot, but the people of Minnesota were voting for a lot more than a person. They were voting. Come on! They're voting for a national government that reflects their values, the values of Minnesota. They also were voting to build on a foundation that we have laid over the last 8 years rather than starting over. They were voting for a senator who would listen and work hard to always make government a fairer and more effective servant. Yeah. And they were voting for leadership that inspires confidence in our strength rather than dwelling on our weaknesses. The hard work and the sound leadership of this nation in the last 8 years has put the United States of America on the frontier of a new era of greatness. We are beginning this month the 73rd straight month of economic growth in the United States, and we will keep that up. And let there be no doubt about the fact we talk about economic growth not for growth in itself, but because we have as Americans before us the real prospect of giving millions of our fellow Americans a genuine stake in the American dream. We have the opportunity, in addition, to forge a new relationship with our principal adversary, the Soviet Union, and to establish a safer and freer world. And we have a chance, and I say the duty, to make the difficult choices on the deficit, the environment, education, and the stewardship of natural resources, which will build an America we can be proud to pass on to our children and to their children. As I said during the campaign, this country will move ahead without letting anyone behind. With the effective, experienced leadership in the United States Senate, and with George Bush in the White House, we can boldly embark on a new adventure. This new adventure is the 4th century of American freedom, which begins in just 11 short years. So tonight, I want to thank all of you for being here. You all know that a senator from Minnesota has an unfair advantage on the 98 other senators in the United States Senate, because a senator from Minnesota comes home every weekend to the best ideas in America. I have been privileged to benefit from the hard work and the sharp minds of some great Minnesotans. And I want to start tonight by thanking a 46-year-old happy birthday boy tonight, Leon Oistad. Now everybody knows where Carlstadt is, right? I also want to thank Doug Kelly and Steve Moore, the leaders of our Washington staff. And Kitty Gamble, who's been such a terrific leader of the Minnesota organization. I want to thank everybody on particularly on my Minnesota staff, which has been my eyes and my ears, my hands and my feet, where I could not be, and my Washington staff, who have been your full-time servants and advocates in our nation's capital. I also want to thank the campaign staff that these are the people that made the most of 10 years in the Senate. Some of them were about 10 years old when I went into the Senate, too. But some of the older ones, Lois West and Vicki Tigwell and Elam Bear and Kim Blenny, how could you lose? I was blessed also with a terrific number of volunteers and contributors. We have over 53,000 contributors to this campaign. If you put them all in one place, they'd fill up the Metrodome. And to Tad Piper and Christine Oshheim, who headed up that wonderful organization, we all say thank you very much for bringing all those people on board. And to the hundreds of volunteers across the state who gave so freely of their time and their talent, the seniors organizations, the farmers, the veterans, all of you wonderful people, especially Elmer Anderson and Sister Giovanni, the tremendous work that they did. But especially, and I've heard this all night tonight, and you know it's got to be true, a special thank you from all of us who were candidates in 1988 to the people of the future, the people on the high schools and the college campuses.
Dave Durenberger wrapping up an absolutely brilliant acceptance speech as he is victorious for another term in the United States Senate. Durenberger joined on the stage here at the Burlington Marriott by his wife Penny, by his 4 children, Charlie, David, Mike, and Daniel. I don't think I've ever seen Senator Durenberger so up, so happy, and just plain ebullient as I've seen him in the last few minutes. He's obviously very much enjoying this large victory over Skip Humphrey. Don?
All right, thank you very much, Mike. Well, despite what the polls have said in the past, and that he had this lead all the way through, it has to be a huge relief for a person to know that they've spent 10 years in the United States Senate, that to fight off a challenge, and a serious challenge.
Oh, yeah, they were scared there for a while, I would think.
Yeah.
All right, there's still a lot more to come tonight. We're going to take a break now. We're going to return with some weather and sports news. But first, before we go, let's take another look at some of the suburban races around the area.
and savings come to Menards' big sale. Save on Z-Brick fire retardant facing brick for the authentic look of real brick or designer stone. On sale now starting at just $1.98 per package. Armstrong no-wax vinyl flooring is on sale too, in styles and colors to brighten any room. Choose Imperial Acetone, now just $4.59 per square yard. That's big savings this week at Menards.
We're helping you build America's heartland at Menards.
This holiday season, journey to the most wonderful place in the universe. Home. Cocoon, The Return, rated PG.
Starts Wednesday, November 23rd at theaters everywhere.